Hey you guys, this is the Couplings Fire podcast. Here's a couple of things you might need to know or maybe you just forgot. I'm Taylor, a volunteer firefighter and also a firewife to my favorite firefighter. Join me as I talk anything and everything fire related. I don't claim to be an expert. I just love to talk fire, and everything I say is my own opinion. My goal? To inspire anyone listening to take the steps to bettering their department, however they can. Let's get on to the episode. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Couplings Fire podcast. I'm your host, Taylor. It's nice to have you with us today. Wow, that sounded really formal. I'm starting to get too good at these intros where I'm like, oh, I'm going to say it nice and formally and introduce myself every time. At least, hopefully I can start remembering that to do that. Anyways, so I have a really cool episode coming at you guys today. I'm excited for it. But before I get to that, I want to make a quick shout out. Today is September 22nd, and it is actually my anniversary today with my husband, Chris. We've been married for 9 years, and it does not seem like it's been 9 years. I can't believe all of the things we've done together, how far we've grown in our relationship and in the fire service together, and just everything we've done, everything that we've been able to conquer together side by side. I'm really excited to see what the next 9 plus years will do for us. I couldn't ask for a better spouse. I couldn't ask for somebody better to be next to me when I have my hard days, to be with me and to be my supporter in both this podcast and with other opportunities that come my way and other challenges that I face against. And I'm happy to be with him in the same aspect for everything he is put up against as well. So just a quick little shout out to him because I love him a lot and I want to make that known. And I believe he deserves a shout out now and then for being such a great guy. Anywho, so on to this week's episode. So I had my friend Jonah Applegarth come on the show. Jonah spent a summer back in 2015 working on a wildland hand crew in southwestern Kansas and eastern Colorado. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get straight on into the episode so you can hear about his experience with it.
And for everyone listening, I'm Jonah Applegarth. I'm from Beatrice, Nebraska. And, I did wildland firefighting for a year.
So we've been friends for a while.
Yes.
A while.
A long while.
Our families knew each other pretty well growing up.
We always joked that Tyler and I were crib mates.
We're crib mates?
Crib mates, yeah. But as babies, we were just...
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, what is that exactly? Yeah, so that our folks were friends when Tyler and I were babies.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how... So yeah, we've been friends for as long as I can remember.
Well, that's really funny because then you were friends with Chris.
Yeah.
But I didn't know you guys were friends, and I didn't know Chris at all.
Right. Yeah. So I don't even remember how Chris and I got to be friends. I think mutual friends we hung out with, and then I had known of him before, and then we hung out with the same people, and then it just kind of happened that way. I don't even remember, but I mean it's a good story if you can ever remember how it started. But.
Right. Okay, so that's basically the backstory of at least how we know each other.
Right.
So then randomly on Facebook, because I'm looking for people to be on the podcast with, because it would be fun to have on and talk to and things.
Right.
And then I see you post about doing wildland firefighting stuff from 5 or 6 years ago, and I completely forgot you did it in the first place.
Yeah, it's something that, it's one of those things that you see Facebook memories that pop up and you're just like, oh man, it's been so long since that happened or
Facebook
whatever.
Memories. That's that's probably my favorite part of Facebook is the memories that pop up. That's mostly why I post things.
So that you can look at them again.
Exactly.
Yeah, I understand that. It's kind of crazy because some of the stuff it's like, oh, good memories, and some stuff it's like, oh, shoot, memories for when I
Can we delete this, please?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I was not photogenic, or I posted random things about pizza, or just really weird stuff. But it can be a blessing and a curse, but
yeah,
that's okay.
Okay, so well, I guess let's just jump in. Why not?
Yeah,
Why not?
so the memories, I guess. Yeah, so I posted some pictures that it had popped up. So I was doing firefighting back in 2015 is when I started. So I graduated from college in 2013, and I graduated from Grace University in Omaha and with a degree in video production. And I had done that mostly growing up. Worked for my dad doing stuff. He was a wedding photographer, and so I did the video side of that. And so when I got out of college, I was like, I don't really know if I want to do video. I want to try something different. So I had Chris and I had a mutual friend that was a firefighter, and so he was like, you should try maybe doing firefighting if you want to look for something new. I was like, yeah, okay. So I went to college, another college for a year, and so that was from 2013 to 2014. And I got done with that, and
Okay, hold on. I'm going to stop you.
yeah,
Okay, so what was your experience like at this other college for firefighting?
it
Because some people listening, I know like some places actually have academies, some places don't.
right.
Some people go to college for this, some people just do volunteer-wise till they get hired. It's like it's all
Sure.
sorts of stuff. So this is an
Yeah.
actual college that had a 1-year program, right?
Yeah,
And
it's
it is since not there anymore, so don't try to look for it in Nebraska anymore.
right.
It's gone, which is really sad.
Oh, I didn't know that actually.
Oh, you didn't? No, it's
surprise.
gone. The entire I can't
Program
remember.
is-
Entire fire program
It's not there anymore.
at
huh?
SCC Lincoln is completely gone.
Wow. Okay.
It's sad.
News to me. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that ended either last year or 2 years ago.
Oh, okay. So it's fairly recent.
It's fairly recent, but it's
development.
gone.
Yeah. Huh. Okay. Well, when I was in it, it was quite a different experience. Moving from the video production side, which was a lot more technologically driven, to the firefighting side, which is it mixes some of the technology with a lot of the more physical aspect of it and a lot more practical knowledge than more of the tech side of things. And so jumping from one world to the other was kind of interesting. And a lot of the other students had they were just going to school for this, so they hadn't done school before. And so I was kind of the old man of the group at that point already. So that was kind of interesting, but yeah, it was just a different world. So it was a cool thing to jump into, I guess.
So I gotta ask, because in my head I'm also kind of comparing this to what Chris is going through right now. So is it you sit in a room for half a day and read, and then the other half of the day you're actually doing stuff, or is it kind of every other day is who knows what's going to happen, or...
Right, yeah. So some of the classes, we did your basic Firefighter 1, Firefighter 2, Hazmat Ops. They had an EMT class. So I went through Firefighter 1, Firefighter 2, and Hazmat Ops, and I got state certified through those. But you basically are in the class for... I can't remember how long the classes ran, but they were only couple days a week, just Tuesday, Thursdays, and so they ran longer. And so the first half of the semester or quarter or whatever system they were on was classroom time. So you'd be learning about processes and procedures, like terminology, all these kinds of different
every
things.
single time you went in?
Right,
Oh,
yeah.
my goodness.
So, I mean, their curriculum was, tried to mix some of the hands-on stuff with some of the other stuff, but a lot of it was just classroom things. And so you're learning the fundamentals of stuff. You're like, oh, this is what a CBA is. This is what some of the tools look like. Here's kind of how you approach an incident. And, if you're first on scene, doing all these things from a textbook standpoint. And then the second half of the class or whatever, we would actually do practical stuff. So they had a fire tower out there, so we'd go out and do procedures through the tower. We cut on cars a couple days. We did a lot of like prepping for the actual state test. So a lot of those things we just ran through as much as we could. So that was pretty cool. That was a lot of the Firefighter 1 and Firefighter 2. The Hazmat Ops was a lot of like rail car identification. So I can't remember a lot of that, and just because it was so much information packed into one class.
Well, you do know you can get the app on your phone, right?
Oh, that would have been much easier then, but...
I don't know if they had the app then.
I don't think so.
That was 2013, so I don't know if they had the app then.
Yeah, I don't think
I have
so.
it on my phone now.
Oh, that
so
would be...
you can quickly look it up and whatever you need.
Oh, yeah, that would be much easier. But they gave us those little orange books that had all the different, placard information and whatever, and... So trying to memorize all that stuff, that was a difficult class, but it was a lot of fun. Very unique, just very different things.
Some people, they either love hazmat or they hate hazmat.
Yeah. Oh, I can see that. Yeah. I think I had a little bit of a love-hate relationship with it. The things that I loved, I really loved, and the things that I hated, I really hated. But it was good. It was
Yeah.
something that, driving down the road and you see a train or something you don't really think about, or like seeing a placard on the back of a truck or something, you're just like, oh, I kind of wonder what that means. And then you just kind of go about your day.
Mm-hmm.
But when you actually learn some of that stuff, I'm not in the arena right, the fire arena now, but I still, drive by a truck and I'm just like, oh, it's a whatever 1023 or whatever, and it's holding gasoline, and it's like, oh, it's a class 2, fire hazard, so it's a flammable object or whatever it is.
Well, it's good for just even the everyday person just to know anyways, because if something ever happens nearby,
yeah,
you kind of know how to respond to it yourself
Yeah.
before first responders get there. So
yeah, I have still a copy of those orange books, and it's fun to like look through and just be like, oh, driving down the highway or whatever, if you're riding along and you look and you're just like, oh, I wonder what
you're
that
gonna have
truck
to get
is.
the app now.
I know. I can't. It's probably way more streamlined than what I'm used to. And like, oh, there's a search function, and I don't have to like filter through all the different chemical names. Oh man, would have made my life so much easier.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, that class is no longer. So I guess how did the end of that class go, and how'd you get into the wildland
Into the
side?
wildland part. Yeah. So when I was in school, it was primarily structural firefighting. They wanted you to graduate with the program was firefighter 1 and 2, hazmat ops, and I think they wanted you to be EMT certified. I don't think they did paramedic. I think that was just EMT. But so I was in the program, and the firefighter 1, firefighter 2, hazmat ops. Like I really loved those classes. That was really great. It got to the EMT part, and I hated the class. I couldn't stand it. Like to the people who are EMTs, good for you. Like I'm seriously, that's a whole nother world that my family is not necessarily the best with needles,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's like I tried giving blood before, and it hasn't really been an easy thing. And so it got to the EMT part, and I was doing it, I was passing the class or whatever, but I was not enjoying it at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like I really just did not like. I hated coming to class every day, and I was like, from what I'd heard, it's like the majority, 80% or whatever of calls that are going that firefighters go out on are medical calls, and only 20% are fires. And I was like, oh shoot. And it's like, well, I don't want to go to work every day and just dread going to work.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just like, no, I don't think this is where I need to be. Like I'd like to still stay in the fire world, but I just don't want to do the medical side of it. And I mean, there's probably a decent amount of people who want that too, but I was like, I still want to try to find something. So I was in the program, and I was getting close to the completion, and we had a class that was this forest fire and wildland fire class. And we had a sub come in and was talking about it, and he's like, yeah, it's, you go out and you fight forest fires, you fight, prairie fires and wildland fires. And they're like, and, anybody can really do it. Like, you don't have to be, EMT certified or whatever. And I was like, hey, that sounds like something I could be interested in. So I followed up with that. I took another class, and so I passed the class, and I applied for a couple different departments, and I didn't get hired on that year. So I finished in 2014 with the classes, and so from 2014 to 15, I just worked another job back home. And in 2015, I applied for a job down in Kansas, and they called me back. They're like, hey, we want you to come down and do this job. And I was like, oh, that sounds fantastic. So I packed up my stuff, and I drove to Elkhart, Kansas, which is way in the southwest corner of Kansas, pretty much in Oklahoma. And you could walk out of the town and you'd be in Oklahoma. It was that close. And so we went down there, but in Elkhart, they had just reestablished their fire program. So they had a truck there, but they didn't have an engine captain. They didn't have any employees.
Oh, geez.
And yeah, so there was just nothing there. So I actually started over in Springfield, Colorado. They had a sister station that was over there. So I started over there, and we would just go back and forth between stations while they were still getting things set up.
And that was pretty close nearby, like.
Yeah, it was in like an hour.
Okay.
Probably difference.
So yeah, you're right on the corner of Kansas.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Exactly. Yeah, you go. There's a place that's a 4 corners, so like you can be in 4 different states at once. So like that was kind of cool. But so we started off in Springfield, and we were there. So we lived in a bunkhouse there for a month probably. And then they finally hired another captain for the other station. So then we moved back over to Kansas, and it was me and 2 other guys that lived in a trailer bunkhouse or whatever while we were in Kansas, and then we would just drive into town and go to the station.
What do you mean by bunkhouse?
So basically,
I'm seeing weird pictures in my head, and I don't think they're right.
Right. So it basically was a trailer house.
Okay.
That just several people lived in.
Oh, okay. Well, so yeah.
Yeah.
Like literally, when you say bunkhouse, I'm thinking like a mix between like military and like I don't
like a cabin in the woods,
exactly.
or like camp or something.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. It kind of functioned like camp because you were only there, temporarily. Like you were at work most of the time, and so you just came back and just kind of hung out or whatever, and then went to work again. And it was a seasonal assignment, so it was only a 6-month contract. Just for the fire season. So it's like you were living there, but you weren't really permanent there. So it's like you can't really put roots down or anything. And so you just brought stuff for that time. And, maybe you would have work after your contract expired, but that was just kind of up in the air. So you were kind of just there temporarily. Mm-hmm. So it was me, and there was a kid from Kentucky who was there, and another kid who was from Washington State.
Wow.
And they came to Elkhart, Kansas. And it was just like...
Wait, why'd the guy from Washington come down?
I know. That's a good question. Because it's like, you would think...
There's plenty of opportunities.
There's plenty of fire. Washington burns all the time. Yeah. So it's like, you would think he'd be able to get something up there. But I think he was still starting out, still new. And so, they had just restarted the program. And so they're like, well, this is a good opportunity to get a couple people here who don't have a lot of experience, and go from there. So I think that's kind of how that started.
Worked out really well for you then.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I was like, I don't have that much experience, it's like I have a degree in something else, but I can still work. And so that's kind of how we started. So the captain was still pretty new. He had done fire stuff, I think, for the military before, and he was just like a general contractor or whatever with them, and then came down to this station. Yeah, he was from Iowa originally, and him and his wife moved with work from like the Carolinas or something back to Kansas, to Elkhart, Kansas. Yeah, so it was a pretty big transition for them to readjust to small town, because it was only 2,000 people, I think, in the town.
Yeah, I know that very well then.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so readjusting to small town life for them especially, it's hard. Yeah. So, but yeah, it was a good time. And like, there wasn't a whole lot to do in the town because, it's small. So my partner, my coworker and I, both coworkers and I would, just do stuff around town, or, we'd go out and go hiking or do whatever that we weren't already doing.
I was going to say go hiking?
Wait, yeah, we would do a little bit of that. We'd go to the pool. It was the summer time, so we'd go to the pool a lot and, go to the library, and that's about all there is to do. But yeah, so it was a pretty good time. So I started there, and we were working. Mostly what we did was a lot of the stuff around the station was kind of like we'd go out on patrols and just, check for hot spots, for fires, if anything would torch off. It was a dry season.
Okay. So when you say go on patrols, I'm literally I have a lot of different movies that play in my head all the time.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm literally thinking that you're in like a grass rig, just like with a flashlight, like looking for hot spots.
I mean, like... a little bit, yes. We would hop into our rig, and it's definitely, it's not a traditional structural fire engine by any means. It's like a flatbed pickup with boxes on the back and a water tank. It's very different. When I first got there, I was like, oh yeah, it's going to be like a fire engine and stuff. And I look at it, I'm like, this is not what I was thinking.
You talk to anybody, even in Nebraska, all over, any of these small departments that do any sort of prairie fires or anything, or like, that's what they use those.
Yeah, it's like,
I'm used to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
brush truck, grass rig, whatever you
Yeah,
want to call
exactly,
it. And so
yeah.
it's like, oh, it's super normal to me. But yeah, if you didn't know anything other than the structural,
Right.
because you didn't do any
Yeah.
volunteering or anything
I
before,
hadn't.
so yeah.
Nope. Yeah, it was quite the shock, quite the culture shock when I got down there and I was like, okay.
This is the truck.
Yeah, they had more of a fire engine apparatus down there, but what we used over in like that was over in the Colorado side where I'm assuming had more people and more money and all that stuff. But on our department, we only had the one truck, and it was just the brush truck or whatever, and it's like, okay, all right.
Yeah.
But I mean, you still had hoses that come off it and whatever, it still sprayed water. So yeah, going on patrol, you'd basically get in the truck and you drive around to different like campsites and populated areas and just make sure. A lot of what we did was cleaning up campsites, and so making sure that there weren't campfires that were left there, and occasionally you'd be putting some of those out. But we kind of did maintenance on a lot of that stuff too. So we would mow the campsites, clean up garbage and like spray out the outhouses. But so yeah, we would do a lot of that, and going on patrol and stuff. We would also go and collect fuel samples. So you would drive a certain distance away and you take grass clippings and you would bring them back to the station, and you had like a dehydrator. So you would weigh them and you would get the weight of the fuel, and then you put it in the dehydrator and cook it. And you would take it out and then reweigh it, and you would measure the like the moisture in it. And
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's very different. Like I when I first saw it, I was like, "You're taking some plants and microwaving them? Like what's the deal with that?" And they're like, "Oh no, we're checking the fuel moisture in
see how fast it's gonna burn.
And it changed. So we would do that once or twice a week. We would drive to all these different locations.
That's such a good idea.
And take some fuel samples. And
I bet that's super normal for anyone who does wildland, but this is so like out of my element. Yeah. Like I have no idea.
It's very, when I first started, I was like, this is a very different.
Sorry,
this is a very different atmosphere, like a whole different mindset than the structural side. Because I'd grown up looking at these things, like I did a bunch, all the classes and stuff. So I was like, oh yeah, this is what structural firefighting is. And then you go to the wildland side, and it's just like, I mean,
throw everything out the window.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's like you still spray water, so it's like, okay, different, hose sizes, and you're still folding hoses the same and that kind of stuff.
Fire still burns the same way.
Exactly. Yeah, fire's still hot. How about that? But yeah, a lot of the things were just so much different as far as the logistics of things. And so yeah, it took quite a bit of getting used to, even just like the training for things, doing like PT and stuff. They're like, oh yeah, we hike a lot with our packs and stuff, because you have to bring all your gear with you, and you're out on assignment, and so you're hauling your pack with you all the time everywhere. And it's like, it's kind of, when you're doing the structural stuff and you've got the full apparatus on your SCBA and all that stuff, like that's heavy stuff, and you're going up and down stairs and stuff. But with wildland stuff, especially with forest firefighting, you can be up in the mountains and you're doing all this physical work and stuff, and you're hauling all your gear, and it can be really physically taxing. So just the way that the PT is structured is just different. It's much.
It's not a sprint. It's a marathon.
It's a marathon. Yeah, and it's so much different.
So would you say kind of your pack and what you're wearing and everything for the wildland, is that kind of similar in weight to your gear in SCBA, or is it heavier or lighter? Or
I think it would probably be similar. It depends on what
tools you get stuck with.
Well, yeah.
Are you carrying the chainsaw? Are you carrying a
like a Halligan
or something?
It depends.
Wait, you guys use Halligans on the wildland side?
Mm-hmm. Well, not as much. Not so much. No, we used.
I was gonna be like, wait, what?
No, not Halligan. We trained with Halligans.
Okay.
But no, we used it's called an adze hoe. So basically, it's like a hoe.
Yeah.
So it's got the scoop on one end, and then it has
the adze like a Halligan.
Yeah, like the Halligan and an axe head on the other end. So they have a couple different tools that you've kind of makeshift work, and it's interesting. So yeah, it's different. But yeah, the weight of things, it just depended, because sometimes you'd be carrying you'd be carrying food with you because you'd be out, if you're out on assignment, you could be gone for, a week or two up in the mountains at a time. So it's like you had to carry all your food
Jeez.
and like your sleeping gear and stuff with you.
I always wondered how you got the food too. So like I've heard a little bit. I'm not sure. So was it like the dried packs of food kind of thing, or like?
It depended. So when I actually went on assignment, that wasn't around the station, you would go to. They'd set up a base camp.
Okay.
So if it was up in the mountains somewhere, they'd get down to a valley, and that was a ways away.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, okay, we set up base camp. So this is where your incident command is going to be, and you have all your different logistics. So you'd have like equipment repair stations and all these different things, but most of the time the base camp is where you'd have your main meals.
Okay, so you come down there at least once a day.
Yeah, usually you'd go up depending on where exactly you were, but you would hike a day or two in and then do your work for the day or two,
mm-hmm.
and then come back to base camp, be able to rest. But the thing is, base camp would move all the time. So every day that I was on assignment, you would you'd strike camp in the morning, have breakfast before you left, go work your day, come home, reset up all your stuff. So like you'd have to tear down your tent, your sleeping bag, all that stuff. You tear it all down, throw it in the truck or in your pack or whatever, and then so you camp that night with the gear that you had, and then the next morning you struck it all again, took everything down, loaded it up before you started for work, had breakfast, went and did stuff. And sometimes you'd be able, depending on what you were doing for the day, you could come back to base camp and have lunch. But most of the time, they would give you like a sack lunch, or sometimes you had to eat some MREs or.
That's what they were called. I can't remember what they were.
Yeah. So sometimes we ate some of those, but sometimes they'd give us, like bologna and cheese and fruit and that kind of stuff. Which you wouldn't believe how good a bologna and cheese tastes after 16 hours of work or something. It's just like, I'm okay with this.
Those are the kinds of foods I actually like eating when I'm working on a fire scene. Granted, my fire scenes are usually shorter than that.
Right.
But those are the foods I like eating. That's what agrees with my body more, and just it works out better.
Yeah.
But I know most people aren't that way. Most people like having like a good hot meal or something like.
Right. It's a whole different thing. But yeah, I was used to eating bologna. Like I'd worked construction before that point. Okay. And so I built pole barns up in North Dakota, and I've done quite a bit. I've done a lot of different stuff. So when I was in college during the summers, I built pole barns in North Dakota. And when you're out there working, it's just like you're hot, you're sweaty, you're tired. You're just like, I just want food of any kind. So we'd often have bologna and cheese and like an apple and some water or something. I'm just like, this is good. I'm totally good with this. But yeah, there were definitely some people who complained about some things, and you kind of get into that schoolyard mentality where you're just like, I've got a pear that's not really great. Somebody trade me for their cookie. Yeah, okay. So you're trading food all the time, and I was like, I loved eating fruit, so I often was just like, I'll take it. I'll take whatever you want. And
give me the fruit, I'll give you the cookie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so that worked out pretty well. But yeah, it's just a different mentality, just a different world.
It's hard to imagine. And I've talked with people just very casually about wildland stuff, and it's just it's hard for me to make sense of it in my brain, because before we started recording and stuff, we were talking about how you could be gone for weeks to a month.
Yeah.
I guess you want to talk any about that, of kind of how it schedule kind of works?
Yeah. So normally when we were at the station, we'd be working, regular 8-hour days, and just doing patrol, doing things in the community or in community events, that kind of stuff. And then so our station was a little different than what some of the bigger stations would be. So they would since our station was small, they took 1 or 2 people from a bunch of smaller stations and combined them into a mobile hand crew. So my normal job, I was assigned to the fire engine. So I would go out with the engine and do engine things.
So you actually did engines sometimes?
In town. Like we would go, do drills and stuff. We didn't actually like.
Did you get any actual fires?
No.
Oh, dang it.
The funny story about that actually is it rained more that summer than it had rained in the last 6 years.
Oh.
And so it just swamped out our entire summer. So in Kansas, we didn't fight any fire. And it was like, well, this is kind of silly. It's like they just started their fire program and then there's no fire.
Yeah.
It's like, and now it's the wettest it's ever been here.
Yeah,
it's like, okay. But no, so we were part of this hand crew, so they'd pull a couple of us, and then we'd go on this big hand crew, and they'd send us out to different places. So my captain and I got selected, and we got put on this 20-person hand crew. And so we went to Durango, Colorado was the first one we went to. So we were there on an Indian reservation fighting a fire on a mountain they had there. And it's like, okay, that should be fine. So we get to the fire and we're fighting it. There's not really too much you can do. Depending on, some reservations are kind of, hesitant with what they really don't want you to damage a lot of the environment that's there. That makes sense. But that really limits what you can do. So we were on this fire for 3 or 4 days, mostly hunting for hot spots. So the fire had already burned through, and so we were, pulling out stumps, just digging around. It's like you don't bring water with you up on a mountain, really, so can't get a truck up in there. So basically you're just spreading the heat out so that it can dissipate normally.
Yeah.
So we were doing that for a few days, probably a week, maybe at the most, and then it rained. And it just rained for a couple of days, and so it put the fire out. And we're like, oh, great. So we were on our way home, and while we were en route back to the station, we weren't even halfway home, they called us again, and they're like, hey, so, surprise, you're going out to Idaho now. And we're like, oh, okay. So it went from being, 3 or 4 hours away to a lot farther away. It's like, okay. So we get to Idaho, and normally the way they run their shifts is you work 2 weeks, solid 2 weeks, then you have 2 days off, and then you work another 2 weeks, and you just keep doing that until you're done. So
well, I know if anyone who's listening ever deals with wildland fires and stuff like that, especially anyone in Cal Fire or with Washington or whatever, they're used to this.
Right.
They're used to people being gone for weeks to months at a time.
For a long time. Yeah. But it was definitely different because I wasn't used to that.
Yeah.
I was used to being like, oh yeah,
go on a call.
Go on a call, and you're gone for a few days, like a day or two maybe or something, and you're like, okay, and you're back. But so we went to this fire in Idaho, and the first day we were there, we worked a solid 24-hour shift. And I was used to working, 8 hours or maybe 10 hours or something. So the first night, it was really, really cool. We burned a valley out. So basically, the fire was in the valley, spreading up towards the outer edges of the valley. So what you do in those situations is you burn towards the fire. So you set a line and you burn towards the fire that's coming at you.
Backburn.
Yeah. So then all the fuel gets burned up. So we created a perimeter around this valley, and we backburned the whole valley. We lit it off.
Jeez.
And this was, at 9 or 10 o'clock at night or something. And so this whole valley is on fire. And we stationed all around the perimeter, facing outward, so that any spot fires, any embers or whatever, we would be able to, go put out spot fires. But a lot of us definitely were looking over our shoulders and being like, this is the coolest thing ever. And you're seeing seeing trees torch, and you get some that the sap heats up and the trees blow up. And oh man, I took some video, which was really cool. But yeah, working a 24-hour shift, and then you got back to base camp, slept for 8 hours, and then we worked another 24-hour shift. And at that point, most of what a hand crew does is they dig a trench about 6 inches deep and 2 feet wide around, a structure, usually, if you're protecting a house or some other thing, or you're just digging a line on top of a ridge. The main goal of that is to create a fire break, so that when the fire burns up to it, it runs out of fuel. And it hopefully doesn't jump the break and, continue on. So you get 20 people, and every person, digs right in front of them, hits down, pulls back a little bit, moves another foot to the right.
Oh,
then you're just basically just,
so
Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, just digging or whatever.
So how long were your cuts, or were your
the trains or whatever that you're doing? It depended, because sometimes you just go until they tell you to stop. So you're on a ridge and the fire's burning up, and it's half a mile or a mile long ridge, and you're just trucking along. You just keep digging and keep digging.
Oh,
And so
jeez.
yeah, after the first two 24-hour shifts, then we worked 16-hour shifts for the whole rest of the time we were there. And so we worked 2 weeks straight, then you had 2 days off, then you worked another 2 weeks straight, and then luckily we were able to that was the end of like our tour, and then they rotated us out at that point. But yeah, we were gone between both fires. We were gone for over a month. And
crazy.
yeah, it was something. It was definitely something different. But yeah, it's crazy because we protected a house and cleared a bunch of brush away, cut some trees down just so that there was nothing close to it. And so we went to a house and did that. We went on, and a few days later, after we'd done a whole bunch of other stuff, we came back and the house was just gone.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's uncontrollable at that point because you don't
have the water with you. You can't do
don't
anything.
have water, and the wind comes up, and it's hard to predict those things, and you can't really, because the fire just goes wherever. But you do the best that you can and hope that's good enough. And a lot of those people, have evacuated at that point and taken a lot of their belongings and stuff. But it's still really rough to come back and and your house is gone. So that was definitely an eye-opening experience. But it was definitely something different. And one of the crazy things is that you don't really especially with a structure fire, the elements can really change a lot of it. So if you get like heavy winds or something, that really accelerates the fire. But on a wildland experience, you can see it. And so we had a spot fire happen in a field. So we saw it torch at the top of this hill in this field. And so we're like, oh, we got to rush up there and get it out before it starts to spread. We didn't get probably halfway up this hill running, and the wind picked up and it just torched.
Oh, geez.
And so you have a wall of flame that's now coming at you, and you're like, nope, turn around and run the other way.
If you can beat it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And you hear stories about a lot of firefighters who, get killed on some of these mountain fires, and they're like, oh, they didn't have time to get in their emergency shelters or whatever. And I can believe it because the wind comes and takes those things, and it was amazing how quick the fire moved.
Well, yeah, people just don't understand how fast fire can move in the first place.
Yeah.
I know just a few grass fires I've been out on, and on the grass rigs and stuff. They move super quick in the right conditions. But when it comes to just all of the vegetation, everything that's been allowed to grow as it is and die and just not get cleared out, there's not much you can do to control that. Yeah. And so then it's perfect prime fire fuel, and then with that wind and everything, you just and you get those nice big gusts and everything, and wind tunnels through the valleys, and it just takes it off. And
it's definitely, oh man, it's something that you don't think about, and until you see it firsthand, it's a completely mind changer. You're just like, oh yeah, fire spreads, not a big deal, and then you see it sweeping across a valley from a mile away, and it's eye-opening for sure.
I remember one time I responded to a call, very, very small fire, but it was just on the side of a road, and the guy who called it in couldn't believe how fast and how far it went from the point when he called to when we got there, and it didn't take us very long to get there.
Yeah.
And he just didn't, he's like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how fast this could take off.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty incredible to me. I've seen several videos of a small fire inside a house.
Yeah.
It starts, just a controlled simulation or whatever. And it's like, oh, here, the fire started. And within 2 minutes, the whole room is engulfed.
Gone, yeah.
And it's just like, man, it's incredible. Fire is definitely something that people sometimes don't respect.
Yeah.
It's like, this is
I think a lot of
dangerous
times they don't
thing.
respect it.
Yeah. Huh.
Anyways, anyway with it, it's just interesting just because structural and wildland firefighting, they're so two completely different worlds.
Yeah.
And one is contained within a box, and it doesn't really matter what happens in that box. There's a lot of bad stuff that can happen in that box.
Right.
But it's still contained to a box, and until it isn't. But it is.
Yeah.
It's contained to a box, whereas the other one is you don't have a way to really get away from it if something goes wrong.
Right.
In structural, you just go outside and you're fine.
Yeah.
If you can make it outside.
Yeah. Yeah, you see, there's a lot of, you hear about California and a lot of the coasts burning every year, like California, Washington, and it's just like, why don't people why can't firefighters get a control of that? And it's just, people don't realize how much, especially, up in, California and Washington, like how many trees there are up there and just how much fuel there is. And yeah, there's a whole bunch of factors that go into play. And yeah, you get a couple of those factors and it's just like the fire just goes. And it's just incredible.
Wait a second. Isn't Oregon in between California and Washington?
Yeah.
What does no one just ever talk about anything that happens in Oregon, or does nothing ever happen in Oregon?
I think that there are quite a few fires that happen in Oregon too.
I just never hear them talked about.
A lot of people talk about California
And Washington. I'm hearing Washington a lot, especially this year, but I hear about those.
Yeah.
I don't hear about Oregon.
Yeah, I don't know if what the difference is, but I've heard that Oregon burns, quite a bit too. So our other two, when we were in Kansas, one of my coworkers actually went to California and they fought fire out there.
Oh, geez,
and so so we had a couple different guys that went a couple different places, but that was kind of an interesting thing. It's just like, oh, cool, we get to travel, and it's like I hadn't been further west than like Colorado, so it was cool. Yeah, it's like you get to see new places, but they're all on fire, but you still get to see new places. So.
It's still a beautiful sight for the stuff that's not on fire.
Yeah. Yeah, you're hiking in the wilderness and stuff, and
Well, and to a point, and not that I want to see anything damaged, granted, but fire is beautiful too.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain, but most people who are listening to this understand what I mean.
Right. Yeah. if you can Google, a valley being torn or lit off or whatever, then I would do it because it's one of those things that. People kind of make fun of firefighters because they're like, oh, firefighters are pyromaniacs. They just like seeing fire. And it's like, it depends. It's like, it's not that they seek fire, but fire is a pretty cool thing. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
We love being able to put what we do to good use and being able to help somebody and actually just know that all the training is for something. Plus, it is a little bit of fun and adrenaline inducing.
Right. Yeah, so it's like you definitely do hate to see things get damaged, but it's you see some sights that you never would have seen otherwise. So it was definitely the Wildland thing for me. It was only a 6-month contract, and then they were like, "Yep, you're only doing this during the summer months, during the fire season, and then your contract is done." So it was something. Definitely glad that I did it, but it was definitely a lot of work, a lot of really, really physical activity, but it was definitely worth doing.
So you probably still would have been happier on the structural side, though.
I think so. Yeah. I wouldn't even have minded being at the station, but just going with the engine instead of just being on the hand crew. Mm-hmm. But especially being with a lot of the smaller stations, it's the opportunities. You don't really have an opportunity to go with the engine much because the engine doesn't actually go all that often. So if you wanted to make, a lot of the really good money, getting hazard pay and overtime, you're working for sure, but you get paid pretty well too, then, you went on a hand crew. And so it's like, it's a catch-22. It was a trade. And it's one of those things that would I ever go back? I'd consider it, but it would be, I've done a lot of other things since then, and I've come to find that it's like, what? Kudos to the people who do it for sure. Like it's definitely a very physical thing, and I like staying in shape, but there's a certain point.
You had such a beard too during that.
I did. The thing that's crazy is that most of the time people don't like a lot of hygiene kind of goes out the window because you're working you work so long days. And it's like, there's no showers out there, So it's like you come back, and especially if you're digging around in soot all day, like you're completely disgusting. You're covered head to toe in soot. So you come home or come back to base camp or whatever. And at that point, you're like, well, all my stuff is just going to be dirty. Yeah. So it's like, you just go to sleep. You just lay down in your filth and go to sleep. You wake up the next day and you go do that. And so nobody brings shaving stuff or anything because you're out, and so it's like you grow a healthy beard at that point. Your hair gets long. It's like you look like a homeless person or something at the end of 2 weeks, and like a couple months. But you learn that like baby wipes are actually a really sought after item or little alcohol wipes. Just little thing, and you wouldn't believe.
I got some stuff to tell you about because I have a friend now, and she's amazing. And she runs Flame Decon, and it's actually a soap and shampoo company that she does.
Really?
It's all based off of like activated charcoal stuff, but it's actually used to decontaminate firefighters, both wildland and structural, from all the everything.
Oh,
and
interesting.
So I'll show you that.
Yeah.
After we get done.
Right.
But,
yeah. I was going to say, I wish I would have known that then. It's like,
right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think she had her business back in 2015.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
of course,
she may have. I don't know for sure.
Yeah. A lot of those things, it's just like, oh, it's nice to know those things now. But yeah.
But
huh.
Subtle plug for that one. So
right. Yeah. Shameless plug.
It smells really good too. She has a soap a month that she comes out with every month, so it smells different and like it's top notch. Anyways, it's funny we're talking about all this though right now because there's 2 fires happening out in western Nebraska right now too. It's interesting, and they've been going for at least a week.
I think so. Yeah.
So
I haven't heard too much about it, but
I haven't much either.
I know that for a while we were getting such bad a haze here with all the other fires.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like fires down in Kansas. You know, coming up this way, and just man, it's crazy how that stuff travels. How smoke travels like that. And it's like you can even get fires on the coast that, you know, if you get a good cross breeze coming, they can travel for states.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just you get haze all over the place, and it's like, man.
And you can smell it. The weirdest thing is smelling it in the air. And then like the mornings where it's really prevalent, I'll wake up like I smell a fire, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Right, yeah. It's not close, but I smell that. Yeah. And I know for a lot of people it can aggravate like allergies and stuff as well. So yeah, it's incredible to me. There's a lot of that stuff I think that people don't realize, and then they're like, what does that smell? I don't understand. You're like, oh, that's a fire. And they're like, there's no fire in this, in the city or whatever. And it's like, no, this is several states away. And they're like, it can't travel like that. And
I feel like there needs to be a little bit better public interaction and relations when it comes to some of those things. Just because there's so much the public doesn't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of funny that you mentioned that, because there was a movie that came out, it's been several years now, but from the people that made the Cars movies, they made like Planes, Fire and Rescue.
I have it. It is literally one of my favorite fire movies ever.
Right? And I feel like that kind of a thing that like...
It does a good job.
Yeah, it introduces, it's like, hey, this is kind of what, some of this stuff is like that people don't really know anything about. And it's like, what better way than to teach kids and be like, hey, this is kind of what these people do. And then, especially, I remember when I was a kid, having dreams of growing up and going into a profession or whatever. What better way to introduce people into that, than as a kid?
Especially the wildland side of firefighting, because they need more wildland firefighters.
Yeah, it's a constant demand.
There is a shortage of firefighters everywhere right now, but wildland is seeing the effects, especially in California. I've been hearing for a little while.
Yeah.
And so it's like doing that, having that at their age where they're looking through it, and like even Paw Patrol stuff.
Yeah.
Getting these kids wanting to go into these professions, like I think even the construction, isn't it a bulldog or something on there?
I believe so.
Like those professions that nobody ever thought about, or like they weren't really pushing their kids to.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think we need more people in trades.
Yeah.
In all kinds of different trades and stuff, electricians, plumbers, all these different things. It's like the industries that people, normally overlook.
Yeah.
It's just like, why not introduce kids to those things early? Yeah.
Well, if you really think about it, if the world all goes to crap and things, those are probably the people who are actually going to have the job still.
Yeah. Yeah, really, because it's like your pipes are still going to break, electricity is still going to happen. And,
become a nurse or a doctor, you're really going to need medical care. Do firefighting, because you're going to need that stuff. You're going to need law enforcement. You're going to need construction. Just all these things, you're going to need it.
Yeah.
Whereas, honestly, the office jobs, even where I'm coming from, the marketing, you don't necessarily need that.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of what I do on the side, I do a lot of sports recording. And a lot of that stuff, even you realize with the pandemic that's happened, a lot of that stuff was canceled.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's kind of a small taste of what
could happen.
Yeah. And it's pretty crazy to think what the world could be like without those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That took a dark turn. I'm sorry. I didn't mean
We're not all doom and gloom, I swear.
Yeah. Okay, so this has been a lot of fun.
Yes.
So basically you tried it out for 6 months, then you just... How'd that end, I guess? Maybe I should...
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I had a 6-month contract, and as soon as that was done, some places have an option to extend your contract or to renew, but you usually end up going to a different state where, you know, you'd go to California or something where it's still sunny, it's still warm, you're still having fires. But
Mm-hmm.
you know, where we were in Kansas, it's like it's wintertime, you know, it snows here. You know, you're not having fires here. So I got done with the 6-month contract, and I was like, this was really good, a great experience. I'm definitely glad I did it, but I was still just a few years out of college at that point, and I was like, you know, I tried this. It was not what I was expecting, which was good and bad, you know. So it was a good experience for sure, but I was like, I think I want to try something else. And so I went on and I did several jobs after that, and it's something I never went back to, but it's not something I would be opposed to going back and doing again.
So if you're okay with saying it, I want you to say what some people were saying about, or to you, or about you, or whatever, when you decided not to renew.
Sure. So there were definitely some people who were disappointed. And they're like, oh, you're not coming back. And I had a couple people say, like, oh, you're that kind of a guy. Like, you're not coming back because of that. You're like, you're going to do something like you're wimping out or whatever. And it's just like, I mean, people come and go all the time.
Yeah.
And this, especially being a temporary contract, it's not like I was just up and quitting. It's just like, no, this was the fire season and you did it and you're doing something else now. And a lot of especially with it being such a physically demanding position, they see a lot of turnover from year to year as people come and go, whether that's, you know, people doing different things, or maybe, you know, it is physically demanding. So maybe somebody gets, you know, injured on the job or something, or, you know, they're just sore and tired or whatever. People come and go. So it definitely wasn't maybe the most fair reaction. But they definitely appreciated my work, and they were, I think it was more they were sad to see me go.
Yeah, well, they hate having someone good and then having them leave.
Exactly.
And even if, maybe, I don't know, maybe you weren't good. I have no idea. I wasn't there. But, like...
They told me I was good, so...
But, you know, like, even if we were that, and like, oh, you're just one of those people who come in for you or whatever, it's just,
Right.
I was kind of wanting to talk about that for a second, just because I see that a lot on the volunteer side with a lot of different departments, too. With people who try it for 6 months or a year or two, don't stay until 5 years or so, and they fizzle out, and people get very upset with them for that.
Yeah.
Well, and it's tough because this is kind of the same situation.
Right.
And it's just like, dang it, you could have been so good, or why did you fizzle out, or what happened? Like, you're going to be one of those who just quit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to stop looking at it like that. Stop looking at, like, oh, you're just going to quit on us, and, like, we wasted time on you, or whatever it is.
Right.
And just, for lack of better words, be thankful that they even tried it in the first place.
Yeah.
Because it could have been for them.
Right.
And even though it wasn't, it's at least they tried. They could have not tried at all.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have had that seat filled for that long. And I don't know.
Yeah. I feel like any position that you do, whether it's a job or a volunteer thing or whatever, the more time that, even if you're only there for a month or something, it's a month that they had someone there to do it.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you weren't there for at least, you know, that period of time, they'd have to find someone else. So any time spent in a volunteer thing or in a job or whatever, I'm not advocating to just work somewhere for a month and quit.
Yeah.
But oftentimes people look at that and they're just like, oh, he was only here for 6 months and then he moved on to something else. Like, that was kind of a waste. And it's like, well, especially if they're a good employee, it's like you get a lot of benefit from them being there, even in the short period of time.
Yeah.
And especially in a volunteer setting, I feel like that's even more important to encourage those people, and because they might come back, you know, or they might go volunteer somewhere else. And especially if you're negative about that when they leave,
they're not going to want to do it again.
Yeah, they're not going to want to do that. So I feel like even just kind of as a work environment, you know, encouraging people as much as you can, even if they're there in the short period of time, you know, is a very, very beneficial thing. And it can be very damaging if, you know, if they're only there for a while and you let them know that. Heaven forbid you say something and then they're like, well, I'm just done with this completely. So there's a lot to be said for positive reinforcement.
Yeah. that is definitely one of the stances I've been trying to take when it comes to volunteers leaving a certain station. Just basically making it as good of a transition for them as you can, so that way if they ever want to come back, or if they're they go to somewhere else, maybe it doesn't work in their life right now for 2 years, but
right,
3 or 4 years it might work again where they can volunteer somewhere else again.
Yeah.
And then you're basically making somebody primed and ready for another department to benefit from it.
Exactly.
And if every volunteer department out there does that, then hopefully the turnaround's going to be a lot better for everyone.
Exactly. So. Yeah, every person is made up of different small experiences.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you're negative in that area, you're killing a seed that might have grown somewhere else. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, every interaction that you have, it's best to be positive. It can be difficult, but I mean, it's a lot of times the unseen and unspoken things that impact a person positively or negatively.
Yeah.
So
Thank you. I really just want to touch on that because that struck me as interesting when we talked about that before we started recording. So I'm like, that is something I have to remember.
No, we need to talk about this. Yeah.
So we could plug your hyperspace database.
Yeah. So on a completely unrelated note, after I got done with firefighting, I've done a bunch of different things. And I did go to school for video production, and I'm a huge Star Wars fan. So I have a YouTube show called Hyperspace Database. So if you just search YouTube for Hyperspace Database, it's all about ships and alien technology and, all these different species and stuff. I go into the history and trivia of all these different things.
It's pretty cool, not gonna lie. I've watched a couple episodes. Yeah. It's just like, holy crap, this is a lot of information. But it was really nice, especially when... And I know why it switched over to just to YouTube, but when it was on just Facebook and it just pop up, I just watched the whole episode on my feed and okay.
I started out doing stuff both on Facebook and YouTube, and it was getting to a point where, a lot of the times as you're developing content, you're trying to manage different things, but it got to a point where I was like, I'll use Facebook to ferry it to YouTube and work from there. So I post stuff on Facebook still, good updates and stuff, and I, post fun pictures of different Star Wars things and be like, this new show's coming out, who's super excited for this, and getting fan interaction. So I use Facebook a lot for that, and then YouTube that's mostly for the show.
See, I'm a pretty big fan of Star Wars, but I'm not even a minuscule of a fan in what you're used to.
It's definitely, my show's definitely pretty niche. So it fills a void that's some people are into, but I definitely... I'm getting to a point, and I'm really hoping to expand into some larger topics, talk about some different things.
Oh, cool.
So I'm really excited about what the future is going to be, because, I'm really hoping to put out more content. But
well, you just reached a milestone of listeners.
I did, So I just reached 1,000 subscribers.
Oh, goodness.
And which is pretty incredible.
Yeah,
so it's just
exciting.
It's one of the best things about doing this kind of a thing is getting feedback from people.
Yes.
And I'm sure you've done this with the show, getting people contacting you and just being like, I just love your show. This is really great. Like, just keep doing it. Like, I learned a lot. It's really great. So I've definitely... You get some people that are some naysayers.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just like, the world is a big
It happens
place.
Whenever anyone puts themselves out there to do anything.
It's true. Yeah, people are like, I don't like your haircut. Well, okay.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, exactly. So,
I don't agree with your opinion.
Yeah.
What's new?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and one thing that's pretty great especially about Star Wars, is the community is super diverse. So I've had people from Brazil contact me and watching around the world, and people leave me voice messages over Facebook, and they're just I had one guy contact me, and he's like, I love your show. It's like me and my son watch it to kind of unwind at the end of the day. I've been going through some really hard stuff, and your show's really been there for me.
That's awesome.
And it's just like, I love that stuff. So if you're a fan of that stuff, or if you're a fan of this podcast, let Taylor know that you really like it, because that stuff is really beneficial. So it's that kind of stuff. It makes you want to keep producing more things. So
yes, it does.
The fans definitely make that kind of stuff. So it's fun.
So go check out Jonah on Hyperspace Database.
Database? I say database? Is it database?
I've said it both ways depending on the context. It's kind of like caramel and caramel.
Oh, okay.
Or
I think I say caramel.
It depends what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay.
If I'm talking about
because you say
a caramel drizzle, but then
you say a caramel macchiato,
yes,
right?
I say caramel macchiato, but like a caramel drizzle.
Yeah.
Or a caramel apple,
right?
But a caramel when it comes to a little candy.
Individual one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. It's kind of like
Yay,
gala,
English
gala, and gala.
Oh, yeah.
That big debate.
There are so many words that are like that. It's just like, yay, English.
Yeah,
right?
right?
It's like, why would we do this to ourselves?
You know, I don't know.
Yeah. I would hate to be someone coming from a different culture and trying to learn English.
That would be a nightmare.
It would be.
How did we do it growing up? How did we figure this out?
I think people today still, I still struggle with some of those things. It's just like, I know English and I still can't speak it, you know? It's very interesting.
Anyways, all right. Well, it was good talking with you.
Yes, thank you for bringing me on. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome. All right, you guys. Thank you for joining us for this episode. We will see you next week. Bye. And for everybody who made it to the very end of the episode, I want to put in a little test footage here for when we were setting up the mic, because I find it hilarious and I think you might as well. So enjoy. A little bit of how to do the placement of this, though, depending on voices. So just talk normally for a little bit to me.
Oh, okay. So I'm talking as if we were talking in a regular room, which it turns out we are in a regular room talking.
I love these test audio clips.
It's so great. I've always thought that bands that play should have a song that they write that is the test song. So it's so for audio, like everybody has a part and, they play the song or whatever. And it's just
make sure everything works.
This is the test song. And then they just play the test song. And I think bands should have that. But I don't know. Nobody's taken my idea and run with it. So.
You know how bad I want to keep this now and put it at the end of a little tag on it or something? Thanks for coming by and listening to the podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave a rating and review wherever you're listening. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram @CouplingsFirePodcast. See you next time, everybody.